Hey, this is Ben Covage. We're out here on the Tibetan Plateau. We just spent a night in the wilderness here, and we made our own fire with sticks and yak dung. And I want to give you 5 tips on how to survive in the wilderness. Okay, number 1. The first tip is wear lots of layers. So you can see what I'm wearing here. I'm only wearing 2 layers. I'm wearing a merino wool shirt and a really big puffy jacket. Optimally, if you're really trying to survive in the wilderness, you'd actually add 2 or 3 more layers to this. Even if it's just a thin sweatshirt, another shirt, even if it's thin, put it on. The more layers you have, the better. Because what layers do is they actually create air pockets in between each layer. And it's actually those air pockets that keep you warmest and keep your body temperature. So the number 1 tip for surviving cold weather or surviving a winter blizzard is that you have to keep warm. And the best way to keep warm is you got to keep your body heat in, and the best way to do that is with layers. Okay, tip number 2 is make sure your skin is covered. Obviously right now it's okay, we're in the daytime, but last night was very cold. My feet and hands weren't quite to frostbite, but they were getting there. So you got to put on gloves, and we recommend keeping your skin covered. Okay? Even if it doesn't feel particularly cold, we recommend putting on a buff. Put it over your face, put it over your eyes, put gloves on, minimize the amount of skin that is showing to the surface. And the reason you do that, because you actually lose moisture and you lose heat through your skin. So the more skin that's covered, the better. So even if your face doesn't feel super cold, put on a little buff, keep only your eyes exposed, and that's gonna conserve heat, because you don't know how long you have until you can get out often in these situations. Say your car breaks down in the wilderness, or you're out on a hike and you get caught in a blizzard. In these cases, you gotta conserve as much body heat as you can, and this is part of conserving your body heat. And these are actually good too. I was talking about layers. You can actually use things like this, gloves, little buff. You can actually stick them in your pockets. Put your pockets really nice and big and full. You can see how my pockets are kind of big and puffy. So in general, you want your clothes to look buff, big, ugly, fat, and fluffy. It's not gonna look fashionable, but who cares? You're trying to survive the night. So the more stuff that you can put in your pockets, the more stuff you can put inside your pockets, your pants pockets, your jacket pocket, any pockets you have, just stuff them full of stuff. Because like I said, it's more about creating that airspace than it is necessarily about the thickness of your clothes. Okay. Then we'll do okay, tip number 3. You gotta pick the right place to sleep and to hunker down. So you can see we've kind of picked here depression. It's good to get lower because you're going to be out of the wind. But of course you also want a flat place, and it's very important to not pick a place that's going to be subject that you could be on a small stream or creek. Right down here we have a small stream, and of course we're not going to go in the stream because it could be icy, there could be wood under there. We don't want to fall through into the water. That would just make us a lot colder. So what you want to do is pick a low spot, and you can even dig out some of the snow. So I'm clearing the snow. If you have the option, always sleep on ground versus snow, because the ground is obviously going to be warmer. Okay, so you clear out the snow, and you can even use the snow next to you as a little wall. Create yourself a little bed area. Okay, so once you have cleared a space that's about as long as your body, of course you want your head to be uphill and your feet to be downhill. Otherwise you're going to be really uncomfortable. So make sure you find a place where your head can be uphill. I've chosen this place because it's a little bit out of the wind. We've dug the snow, so that creates a little wall around us. that protects us from any wind. So the lower you can get, of course, if there's a cave, there's a depression next to a rock, the more you can get out of the wind, the better, because that wind is going to suck your heat away from you real fast. So the name of the game is trying to conserve your body heat as much as possible. So we've cleared this area. We've made it dirt, so the snow isn't quite as cold to us. And then you can use the snow as a wall. If you don't have a blanket or don't have a sleeping bag, and even if you do and it's extremely cold, people think, well, I shouldn't touch the snow. But in a very emergency situation, you can also use the snow to cover you up. Because while the snow is 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius, probably around you is going to be a lot colder. So even though this is cold, the air is going to be colder. So this can actually act as an insulator to keep your body heated. So we don't have enough snow here, but if we had a large pile of snow, we could actually dig a hole into the snow, make a little snow cave, and get inside of it. I know that sounds really cold, but it's actually going to preserve your heat more. It's going to act like a little tent for you. And so tip number 3 is dig a little snow pit. And if you have to, we don't have enough snow here, but dig further into the snow and make a little snow cave so that you can actually sleep inside. It'll act as a tent, it'll keep your body heat in, and the snow will act like an insulator for your body heat. Tip number 4, once you got your area selected and prepared for you to sleep, whether that's inside a snow cave, it's on the ground, wherever you're sleeping, you want to protect yourself from the cold of the ground, okay? The more stuff you can put below you, the better, because that ground is going to suck the heat right out of your body when you're sleeping on it. So you can put that down. If you have extra clothes, you'll probably be wearing all your clothes, but if you happen to have extra clothes, a tarp, anything, even your backpack, if you don't have anything else, put something down and put something between you and the ground. And the more you can put, the better, because that ground is going to take a lot of heat from you. Even if you're just sitting, making campfire, talking, waiting for a rescue, waiting for the weather to clear. When you're sitting, sit on something like this. So the rocks or the ground is not taking your heat. And then of course, when you're sleeping, you want to be sleeping on a pad like this or a tarp or whatever you have with you, okay? So if you have extra clothes, put them underneath you. And if there's rocks or divots below you, below your tarp, you can actually put those below you and they can fill in the spaces. In this case, you can see my feet are a little low here. So I could actually take my backpack and I could prop the bottom of my mat up and I could keep my feet up. And that way I don't feel like I'm sliding down the hill. Okay, last tip, tip number 5 is stay where you are. A lot of times people get stuck in a snow emergency because there's a blizzard or because there's a whiteout. They can't see where they're going and they say, well, we need to go get to help or we need to get to a lower point. But it's usually just better if you stay where you are, let the help come to you, let the weather clear, and then go out. More people get lost and put themselves in a more dangerous situation because they decide to keep moving. So once you decide you're lost, you're in an emergency situation, stay where you are. Help will probably come, and even if it's not coming, you probably need to wait until the weather gets better. So stay put. That's the number 1 rule of winter rescue, is stay put until the weather gets better, and then you can move. Don't move until you see the clouds move and the snow moving away, because then you have a better chance of getting out. Okay, this is a bonus tip. So just make sure if you are in a winter situation, you're stranded, you have an emergency, you have to survive out there, make sure you drink a lot of water, okay? And people think if I drink snow, that's fine. I can just drink the snow and that will hydrate me. It's not true. It actually takes your body more energy and more heat to heat up the snow inside of you than the actual water from the snow gives you. So don't drink snow, make sure you drink fresh water. So if you have to, melt your snow and then drink it. So melt it outside of your body and then drink it. I know when you're cold, you probably don't feel like drinking cold water, but you gotta stay hydrated. That's gonna help your body maintain the heat it needs, and it's gonna help it stay strong. So stay hydrated and make sure you're eating. If you got a Snickers, if you got crackers, even if they're cold, even if they're hard, stale, eat whatever you can, because your body's gonna need that heat to stay warm over the long time until you can get out. Okay, while we're talking about winter survival, I want to tell you about the 2 most dangerous conditions you're likely to face while you're outside in the wilderness surviving in the cold. Okay, those 2 conditions are number 1, hypothermia, number 2, frostbite. Those are probably your greatest enemies. First, hypothermia is when your body temperature drops below 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Of course, normally your body maintains a temperature of 98.5 Fahrenheit. So that's a good 3 degrees to 4 degrees colder than you usually are. And that's a problem because then your body cannot start to reheat itself. And so no matter how warm you get after your body drops below 95 Fahrenheit, it just keeps going down this cycle. Okay? One way you know that you're going to have hypothermia is you kind of lose focus in your brain. Your body's taking the blood away from your brain and putting it back into your core because it knows it needs to keep your heart and lungs warm. And so with hypothermia, a lot of times the first symptoms will be, of course, that you're cold, but then you start to lose 100% consciousness, you start to make bad decisions, and then that generally spirals down to people making even worse and worse decisions. So catch it early and make sure you keep your body warm and conserve heat as much as you possibly can. If you are hypothermic, rewarm your body slowly. You don't just pour scalding hot water on your body when you get back into civilization, but rewarm your body slowly. If you find someone that's hypothermic, make sure you wrap them in a lot of sleeping bags. Make sure you change their clothes to the warm and dry. Your whole job is to put them in a little slow time oven so that their body is slowly reheating. Okay, that's hypothermia. Okay, frostbite is different. Frostbite is actually when the cells inside of your body, which are mostly full of water, when those cells actually freeze, because a lot of the percentage of the mass of your cell is water, so that water actually freezes because it's so cold. And that usually happens in your fingertips, your nose, and your toes, areas that are really far from your heart and are getting less blood circulation. And so the most prone areas are going to be your fingers and your toes to frostbite. And so the important thing with rescuing frostbite is don't rewarm it if you think it's going to refreeze, okay? A lot of people, and don't rub it, because that's actually going to take the ice crystals inside the cells, and it's going to create more damage inside of your fingers or toes. So don't rub it, gently rewarm it, but if you rewarm it, make sure it's going to stay warm, because if you rewarm it, you're de-thawing those ice crystals. There's going to be a lot of pain after that, and then you can actually do more harm if you do freeze-thaw, freeze-thaw, freeze-thaw. So make sure if you rewarm it, it's going to stay warm, and they're going to be able to recover. And they're going to be close to medical care, because there's going to be some blood issues in their hands, and potentially with very severe frostbite, they may have to have their fingers or their hands cut off. Sometimes it can be caught early so that you can rewarm it and you only lose sensation in your fingers. Of course, it starts with numbness, and then it spirals downwards to tingling, and then of course you don't even feel anything. But after you don't feel anything, when you rewarm it, that's when the pain really starts, because that's when you start to re-feel the ice crystals that have punctured your cells.